Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands and welcome to an SB Reviews where today we have ourselves a track from an act named Aspartame Daddies titled Horny Toad from Hell. And if we switch over to here, I think this is the most punk thing that I've seen all day. I love it. We're going to check out this track, we're going to listen through it from start till finish, and we're going to hear what we think. Let's go, let's do it. Horny Toad from Hell. We got lyrics as well, which is kind of dope.
He's a great horn lizard, straight from hell. He's a great horn lizard. No one can tell. Shoots blood from his eyes. His heart's for the smell. He's all the horny toad from hell.
So there's definitely some dominant parts of the mix, but I think the musicality of it is fantastic.
Rules over text like a mini T-Rex. Rules Oklahoma with his X-ray specs. Kingdom is a prairie where he's the apex. He's a horny toad from hell. Those who fought, they all died. He's gonna eat you alive, one bite at a time.
And I kind of like, sorry to interrupt, I like how the guitar leans over into the bass in the middle there. It's almost kind of like the bass is having its own sort of solo bit.
Rolls over Texas like a mini T-Rex. Rules Oklahoma with his X-ray specs. Kingdom is a prairie where he's the apex. He's a horny toad from hell.
It's just a fun story, to be honest.
You better run, you better hide. Those who fought, they all died. He's gonna eat you alive, one bite at a time.
That caught me by surprise. That caught me by surprise. But yeah, we're going to talk about this track. We're going to look through the lyrics just really quickly. I'm going to talk about this track more in the conclusion. Because if we look through the lyrics for this track, it's so cool, man. He's a great horned lizard straight from hell. Shoots blood from his eyes. His farts don't smell. Like the sense of humor around it, but also just kind of how badass his lizard is. I just love the approach to the way the story's been told. Rules over Texas like a mini T-Rex. Rules Oklahoma with his X-ray specs, because you got that in the art as well, of course, and everything like that. I just think it's just really cool, man. Like, it's kind of wholesome, but it's also like you get the real feeling of the danger of the horny toad from hell, you know what I mean? But yeah, definitely talk more about it in the conclusion. Because welcome to the conclusion of my review of this track from an act named Aspartame Daddies titled Horny Toad from Hell. So I think I gave this song an overall score of like 7.4 out of 10, which is not a bad score at all. There were some things I really enjoyed about this, maybe the occasional bit of constructive criticism, but that's mostly sort of a production thing, and it's nothing too serious. And before I want to go into it, we spoke about what the track was about in that lyrics section, but I think effectively it's just describing horned toads and how kind of badass they are, and how like when you just look at them like squirting blood out of their eyes and everything like that, they're just a phenomenal animal, and like how they roll over the thing, and I dig it. I kind of adore the fact that we're trying to tell just a really interesting story. Like there is a lot of music and it's practically just the same thing, and I adore the fact that we're trying to do something different, so I'm thankful for that. Now, my understanding, what I've been told about this, apparently this is a Ramones core pop punk song, and when you take that into consideration with the vocal style, for example, it's very, very sort of like it's a great sort of addition to that style. I think it's very authentic, and it's done tremendously well. We don't have a lot of color to the melodies and everything. We aren't doing super wild, incredible stuff with the vocals, but I still feel like they're handled well. And I think that there is an inherent catchiness to the way that we sync with a lot of the melodies on like the lead guitars or whatever's going on there. And I think there's an understanding of how to groove with the percussion, the related kind of patterns there. So I think that even if it's not a wildly varied performance, it's incredibly well done because it knows what it's trying to do and smashes it. And the attitude is there. Well, I think that kind of cool kind of that swagger to it, that sort of punkish aesthetic, there's definitely there with the way we express ourselves, and with the subject matter it matches, I think, quite neatly. So I feel like there's a good connection there. The track at 2 minutes 26 it is quite well structured. I mean, like, it's not a super complex track with lots of twists and turns. That establishes a main motif for an idea early on and sticks with it a lot. And you do have variation, for example, on where some of the instruments are in the mix there. You have like at one part a guitar on the left and a bass in the middle, and then there's another guitar on the right. And I appreciate the fact that we are trying to diversify things there. I think if you had not had that section with the instrumental parts going across the stereo field like that, it could have been like a 1.5 minute track. So I'm glad they had that bit of variety structurally and compositionally. There were iterations of the existing melodies within the piece, but presented in a different way. And I think that especially having less of the story when you don't need it and allowing the other parts of the arrangement to shine can be really effective. It does increase your real estate without adding filler. Guitar parts had a sizzle to them. I'll talk about the rhythm guitars in post, like in the production section, because I'm wondering how we recorded the rhythm guitars in the background, whether we did double tracking for them or if we kind of how we did the guitars, because those guitars, the way they were kind of being expressed in the mix seemed a lot quieter than I would typically expect. I'm wondering how they did that, but I feel like there was definitely an oomph to the rhythm parts there with the power chord elements there. We had some upper melodies with the lead guitars on the left and right, and some different sort of fuzzy distinct tones there that they weren't trying to be a super clean like pop recording or whatever. They weren't going for a really polished tone, I think, on purpose, because that's not the type of music we're doing here, and it would seem maybe a little bit less kind of a little bit odd if it was too precise of a kind of a sort of a polished tone to it. So that fuzziness, that grittiness to it is fantastic. I like the chemistry between the musicians involved in the actual performance itself, going from those melodies and chord patterns there, rolling with the bass line underneath, working with the harmonies in a way that kind of makes sense on the lower end. There is a little bit of looseness occasionally, but I still feel like it's still so cool sounding because it actually sounds like they're playing their own instruments and they're not feeling self-conscious about needing to sort of beat match and do all that kind of stuff that a lot of musicians do to almost kill the musicality of it by trying to make it almost robotic. I appreciate the fact that it sounds like I'm listening to a live track. I think that's really cool. And the drum parts as well are really neat because you just have these really interesting kind of this constant movement forward here that loops just really in a very satisfying way. And it allows, again, for movement to go forward with the vocal parts, like there's syncing of some of the drum patterns, some of the kick and snare parts with the vocal lines. But it's also, it's not over embellishing it, like it pockets in a way that even if there aren't a lot of really extensive, wild main components, it just seems like everything is aware of everything else and isn't trying to overcook it, But I feel like there's a chemistry between the bass guitar and drum parts. I think the vocals when they're in there are nice, are the icing on the cake, and it's a cool story. The theme overall is very rock and roll. Like it's got this kind of raucous nature to it there, where again it's not trying to present itself in a way that's necessarily as palatable, but it's so sick to listen to just because of the tones and textures involved. It's also the relative simplicity of the minor scale with the power chords and the octaves. It's just a force. And I think that if we had a wild, crazy solo section or tried to sort of be a little bit too adventurous with some of the lead parts outside of the vocals, and maybe would have taken away from those. So we were trying to, again, keep things at a similar level, sort of in levels or in terms of its intricacy or the journey you go on with it. And yeah, it's just easy to sort of digest and sort of like get behind. You just kind of want to nod your head and enjoy the groove of it as opposed to appreciate the craziness of it. It makes sense. But I think, you know, it's just figuring out what your focal point is, sticking with that. I think they did that here. The studio recording, mixing, mastering, I'm wondering how he recorded those rhythm guitars, whether we did one take and copied to the other side of the stereo field, or if we separately tracked those two guitar parts. When I started doing recording, I did copy the rhythm take and put it on the other side of the stereo field, and what happens is you get these phasing issues where you think the guitars are going to sound wide, but if they're exactly the same take, they kind of go into the middle. So I'm wondering if there was a little bit of that going on. It might not be the case. I might be misinterpreting things, and also you might have just had the rhythm guitars in the middle. But I feel like if we had double tracked the guitars, maybe made them a little bit more sort of low end oriented, and then maybe had like the lead guitars maybe cut to like 150 hertz on that side, then the bass, of course, in the middle of that. There's just quite a lot of dynamic range between those verse parts where there was less going on. That could have been a deliberate thing, lowering the instrumental volume of stuff, to be fair, but it was quite a noticeable shift between those. So just in case we were wanting things to be more level, it's just about, again, carving out with filters and kind of stacking. But also, if this was the desired effect, I think it's a really interesting way to mix, and I kind of dig that we're doing something a bit different. But I feel like the vocals, guitar, bass, and drums, where they were in the frequency spectrum was good. I think the tones that you had from the distorted guitars dictated any resonances, and they weren't overwhelming or anything like that. And I feel like there was definitely dynamic range, which I appreciated. It wasn't overcompressed, and it was nice and loud without pumping, so the bus compression and limiting was handled. But effectively, this is my review of this track from an act named Aspartame Daddies, titled Horny Toad from Hell, and hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please do go show them some love via their various social medias and Spotify page, and stay cool, stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as you need the help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world. And I will catch you in the next review. Spiderhands out.